Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, entitled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. We're on text 18. We're on text 18. It's September 11th, 2022. Text 18, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3. Ayajayat. Ayajayat. Dharma Sutam. Dharma Sutam. Ashramedhai. Ashramedhai. Tribi. Tribi. Vibhu. Sa. Sa. Api. Api. Shmam. Shmam. Anujai. Anujai. Rakshan. Rakshan. Reme. Reme. Krishnam. Krishnam. Anuvrata. Anuvrata. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. Ashramedhai Stribir Vibhu. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. So Pikshma Manujai Rakshan. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Reme Krishna Manuvrata. Would anyone online like to recite the verse? Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Ayajaya. Ayajaya. Made to perform. Made to perform. Dharma Sutam. Dharma Sutam. By the son of Dharma, Maharaj Yudhisthira. By the son of Dharma, Maharaj Yudhisthira. Ashramedhai. Ashramedhai. By horse sacrifices. By horse sacrifices. Tribi. Tribi. Three. Vibhu. Vibhu. The Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord. Sa. Sa. Maharaj Yudhisthira. Maharaj Yudhisthira. Api. Api. Also. Also. Shmam. Shmam. The earth. The earth. Anujai. Anujai. Assisted by his younger brothers. Assisted by his younger brothers. Rakshan. Rakshan. Protecting. Protecting. Reme. Reme. Enjoyed. Enjoyed. Krishnam. Krishnam. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Anuvrata. Anuvrata. Constant follower. Constant follower. Translation. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices. And Maharaj Yudhisthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal monarchical representative on the earth because he was the constant follower of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. As stated in the Vedas, Ishopanishad, the Lord is the proprietor of the entire manifested cosmic creation, which presents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Anyone who violates the plan is punished by the law of nature, which is acting by the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Yudhisthira was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. And Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal monarch on this supreme principle. Both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svaya Mupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kantan Mostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tuyubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 18. Jaya Dharma Sutam Ashramedai Stribir Vibhu So Pikshmam Anujai Rakshan Reme Krishna Manuvrata. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices, and Maharaj Yudhisthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of God, had protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Hare Krishna. Okay, so, all right, so Prabhupada, he has his statements here. This is the manifested cosmic creation, which presents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Okay, so that's that. I mean, I know for me that it can help us. It can help us to understand what's going on here. What's going on here? The material world. A Sanskrit name for the material world is Durga, Durga, which means fortress or prison house, and she's the presiding deity of the whole cosmic creation is Durga, otherwise known as Maya, Kali. In the Brahma Samhita, Brahma expresses Srishti Shtiti Pralay Sadhana Shaktir Eka Chaheva Yasya Bhuvanani Bibharti Durga Ichanurupam Abhyasya Chachestate Sa Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So the example given, just like the warden, the director of the prison house, is a servant of the government, very, very, very dear to the government, very dear to the king, very dear to the king, just as the director of the education system. The warden has the particular, maybe thankless task of dealing with the criminal element of society. So taking it out of the metaphor. And so Durga, this demigod, she serves Govinda. She serves at the pleasure and for the pleasure of Govinda, the original person, the first progenitor, who's tending the cows, yielding all desires. Govinda Madi Purusham, the original, the substrate, the personal substratum of all existence. Govinda Madi Purusham, Tamaham Bhajami. And so, And so like the purpose is not like, the ultimate purpose is not to be mean, nasty, and sadistically give punishment. At the same time, ideally, in a state or a country, the purpose of the prison house is really to rehabilitate. It's really to make the prisoners happy through some severe wake-up calls. Like, okay, like get rehabilitated here. Then you can enter society and actually be a contributing member. And then you're happy, not with this criminal behavior, always in anxiety. Will I be caught and going to prison where your freedom is restrained? No, be a contributing member of society, law-abiding. Okay, so that's right. And so, yeah, so the prison is just really like, it's meant to be like a time for contemplation. Like how did I get here? How did I, how do I, and like, okay, what's going on in my consciousness? Ultimately, consciousness is the determining factor. So, and then, we can take, I spoke of like material world, universe as a Durga, as a fortress, a prison house, meant for really the rehabilitation. Ideally, the warden and the administrators and the guards, they really want the best, they really want the prisoners to wake up to who they really are. And again, taking it out of the metaphor, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajja Kabunoi Shravanani Shudachite Karya Udai. So who we really are, that love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. And it's not something to be gained from from some artificial, pretentious, superfluous external source. And that natural love of Krishna, the source of all bliss, it's awakened by this process of hearing and chanting. And so we can think of the prison house as the material world as the universe, or we can think of like our bodies, this body that we inhabit. This is a microcosm of the universe, right? The universe is the universal form, the universal body. And just like, okay, like there's Mahavishnu, who's the super soul of, let's call it the meta creation, the whole cosmic manifestation, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, the super soul of the macrocosmos, this particular universe, and then Kshirodakashayi Vishnu as Paramatma, is the super soul within the body of all living entities. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Videsha Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantrudani Mayaya. So Krishna expresses to Arjuna that he's the super soul in the heart, Videsha Arjuna, in the heart of all living entities, and the living entity, whether we're in the body of an amoeba or an elephant or a human, we're on a machine made of material energy. So this is our particular prison house. And really the bars of the prison house, that's our material desires. It's the senses and giving power to the senses, right? Like an observation we often make, right? What goes in the name of freedom is being more and more each generation, it seems to. What goes in the name of freedom means to be a complete slave of the senses. Okay, so to be free, because I can do, means to be a slave of my mind and senses. Whereas in a sense, if we tapo divyam putraki in sattvam shuddhyadyasma brahma sakyam tvananta, to the extent that we voluntarily agree to restrain and constrain our senses, not just in itself, but then to positively give ourselves to a bona fide path, to the bona fide path of Krishna consciousness, as given by the Acharyas, as given by our current link to the Parampara Srila Prabhupada, to extent in the sense that we agree to curtail our freedom, to curtail the freedom of the senses to act wildly, to use the chariot example, the horses to go wild. No, I'm going to constrain these reins and horses. Then that really creates an environment for the soul to be free to express its natural love and enthusiasm, and to not be bound and a slave by the material modes of nature. So the material universe, the gunas, they entrap us, they imprison us only to the extent that we give them power to do so. And that means to the extent that we retain our non-Krishna conscious desires. So, okay. So then here, this is a verse glorifying Maharaj Yudhisthira. So Maharaj Yudhisthira and his descendant Maharaj Parikshit, these are examples from a few thousand years ago of ideal monarchs, ideal kings. And so, yes, that the king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. And Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal monarch on this supreme principle. So the idea is, okay, so when, let's say, the king, leader of the government, so naturally they've got opulence, and to the extent that they're like using the opulence for personal sense gratification, rather than to support the whole community in genuine spiritual life, then that's degradation. That becomes the degradation. So Maharaj Yudhisthira, he had whatever palaces and riches and treasuries, and he had the consciousness, so he had the realization to use it all for Krishna, to use it all for Krishna. Okay, so then that's perfect monarchy. So that's a far, far better system to have an actual Krishna conscious realized monarch. And yeah, this monarchy, it's we could think like it's not the brutal autocratic maniacal dictatorships that we're used to from the past, whatever, few hundred years. Okay. But like Maharaj Yudhisthira, he would humbly receive, he would consider himself unqualified and humbly receive guidance from the Brahmins and from especially from the Vaishnavas. Right? There's the pastime story from Mahabharata that Dronacharya asked Yudhisthira to go into the town and find someone less qualified than himself. And he asked Duryodhana to go into the town and find someone more qualified than himself. And whatever, maybe they had some time frame. You got 24 hours or whatever it was. So they came back. They came back after the process. It was like a take it to the street process, and they both reported failure. They both reported failure. I'm not remembering all the details, but essentially, Duryodhana, he could find people with qualities, but if he really looked honestly, he could see that really I'm superior to them. All in all, I'm actually better than them. I'm superior. So he couldn't succeed in his assignment. And Maharaj Yudhisthira, he would find people. He could see there were faults and shortcomings, but all in all, he could see, I'm lower than them. I'm lower than them. So he also failed in his assignment to find someone to find someone lower than him. Okay, so it just reveals the devotional consciousness and the demoniac consciousness. So we can look, because it's one for sure, like a Vaishnava or aspiring Vaishnava does not live with blinders on, and does not live with blinders on, and honors his or her perceptions like that. At the same time, we can notice, like, if we're seeing like maybe more and more each month, if I'm seeing the faults in others and only their negative bad sides, and I'm better than them, and like that, then maybe I got some weeds. Maybe I got some weeds growing in my heart here. Okay. Again, it doesn't mean that Vaishnav heart, sees with rose-colored glasses and doesn't make distinctions like that. But at the same time, if more and more all we're seeing is the negative in others and how I'm more qualified, that almost surely indicates I got some anartha, some unwanted things that are blocking my progress, cleansing the diamond of the soul and progressing in Krishna consciousness. So, but like a truly Krishna conscious monarch, then the people are thriving and very happy, as described here and other places of the Bhagavatam. And just a bit historical, like this, a sweep of history interlude. If we look at practically in all parts of the world, whether India or Europe or more recent centuries, North America, Japan, like that, Far East, that, okay, if we look, so first there was like the corruption of the Brahminical class, the class that's meant to be intellectual, not in a dry philosophical sense, but intellectual, like philosophically astute, and in a sense, like really realizing the higher values of life, what it means to be dharmic, what it means to be God conscious. And they are humble and austere, not interested in gratifying their own senses. And they're detached from compliments and popularity and money and stuff like that. Of course, money is not intrinsically evil. Like someone like Maharaj Yudhisthira has a vast treasury. He uses it to support the Krishna consciousness of everyone. Then that money is Lakshmi Devi. That money is spiritual. So the Brahmins became corrupt basically by degrading from a spiritual conception of life to a material conception that, okay, we are superior, as described in Bhagavad Gita, Chatur Vanyam Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha Tasyakar Taram Avyayam Vijakartaram Avyayam. So Krishna says that, the whole one's position is based not on birth, not on jnana, but based on guna and karma, quality and activity. So like the Brahminical class, instead of dedication to uplifting everyone, we're the superior class, let's keep everyone down. And then they develop structures and institutions and the whole thing becomes vitiated, polluted, like that. All right, so then understandably, then the other parts of society lose trust, respect, and then we look at the sweep of history, and more, like then the Kshatriya classes, or like the knights and the feudal landlords and the warrior classes became like more powerful than like the popes, and we can see similar history in the Far East and India, like that. And then, and then as we discuss, then when Kshatriyas became less and less like Maharaj Yudhisthira and Maharaj Parikshit, and more like, I want to accumulate power for my own sense gratification and riches, and then it becomes exploit the people through taxation and things like that. Then that becomes degraded, and that becomes corrupt. And then understandably, then people are oppressed and maybe tortured, and they can see like there's not purity here. So then we lose trust, we lose faith. And again, sweep of history, centuries go on, more and more those who are inclined towards like the Vaishya propensities, Vaishya karmas for bhavajam, that becomes like industrial revolution, that the military industrial complex, and like the intellectuals become sold out dogs rather than detached, spiritually realized, self-realized people, God conscious, dedicated to the spiritual upliftment of society. They become to get a salary, I'll serve the military industrial complex, and then further degradation, and then so much exploitation, and then more and more it becomes the the worker class, and that becomes like non-theistic, atheistic, communist ideas. So just a brief historical interlude there to give some context and foundation for our discussion. So this talking about king's responsibility, king's responsibility. Both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties, and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. The king is earlier in the purport, the king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. So we're all kings. We're all kings. We're all kings. So I'm meaning that, so like we all have, or we've all had, we'll have, like persons taking shelter in us right now. Okay, I'm not just casually talking. I'm accepting the service of leading a Srimad Bhagavatam class, and soon we'll go into discussion. So I'm accepting that service. So I'm accepting the service to represent Srila Vyasadeva, to represent Srila Prabhupada. So just like here, talking about the kings have responsibility for the Krishna consciousness, the upliftment of all the praja, not just the spirit souls, not just the atmas in human bodies, but all over in all the species. So so in this service of leading Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad Gita as it is, or Chaitanya Charitamrita, so then so there's responsibility there. Okay, there's responsibility. Someone's in the service of managing a project. Someone has children or students, a school teacher or patients or clients in a profession. So that's essentially the role of the king, of Maharaj Rishabhadev, who's completely in the line in terms of consciousness of Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Rishabhadev. Yeah, he says, Guru and the Sashat, Sajano and the Sashat, Jananese, the Sashat, Namo Chayadya, Samupeta Michu. So he says that one ought not to accept a position where others are taking shelter, unless one is qualified to liberate the dependents from the cycle of birth and death, and ultimately that process is, unless one is qualified to give Krishna consciousness. So before starting the class, I offer obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. We quote the Mangala Charana, Om Mangyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshra Unmilitamina Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. So we're invoking the presence of personalities, feeling unqualified, or at least endeavoring to feel that way. Was it two days ago, Anandini led class, and as part of her class, she read one of the poems that Prabhupada wrote on the Jaladuta there at Boston Harbor, where Prabhupada is, he's writing to Krishna, he's supplicating Krishna, Prabhupada's expressing, he's saying, he says, I'm called Bhakti Vedanta, but I have no knowledge and no devotion. No knowledge, no devotion. So obviously that's not like, oh yeah, I'm unqualified, so let me go home and hide under the covers. No, here I am in this bold adventure in this foreign land with complete Kali Yuga consciousness. He says, so Prabhupada's truly feeling himself with no knowledge and devotion. And I have trust, I have faith in chanting the holy name and faith in the mission of my spiritual master. So if you want to make true this name, Bhakti Vedanta, if you want to make true this name, then use me as an instrument, make me dance, make me dance, make me dance. So that's that alive growth edge, right? Where that we're in the name of humility and I'm unqualified, we're we're not using that as an excuse to not give 100%, 100% energy, 100% enthusiasm, 100% intelligence, fully engaged in our service, while cultivating a consciousness of I'm unqualified. Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, please use me as an instrument that whatever I speak in this class represents you and will move people's hearts. That in whether it's in raising children or managing a project or in this household or in whatever role, let me represent you. Let me be a responsible instrument, And so, yes, so that's it. So that there's whenever there's someone dependent on us, we're hosting a program, then there's a responsibility. There's a Krishna consciousness is joyful, Shushakam Kartumavya, and there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility, whether we have Lord Chaitanya says, Kipavipa Kubinyasi Sujakiniya, Ye Krishna Tatveda Say Guru Hai. He says that whatever one's position, right? Because Vaishnavism is transcendental to this higher status, lower status. But like whatever, one's in the body called black, white, American, Jewish, Arab, tall, short, Sudra, Brahmin, whatever. Lord Chaitanya, then he said, even though he was in the sannyasa ashram, he said, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a vanaprastha, I'm not a Sudra. Gopi Bhartu Padakamalur Das and Das. I'm a servant of the servant of the servant of the master of the Gopi, Sri Krishna. That's who I am. Jivara Srupori Krishnara Nityadas Krishnara Tatasta Shakti Beta Prakash. I'm a Jiva soul, servant of Krishna. Let me awaken that. Let me share that with others. So Lord Chaitanya says, everyone can be a guru. Everyone's meant to be a guru. And in a sense, anytime we, again, especially if someone who's hearing from us, someone's taking shelter, someone's dependent on us in any way, even in our occupational spheres, then we're meant to rise to the responsibility to represent Lord Chaitanya, represent Srila Prabhupada, and be a guru. What's it mean to be a guru? Yea, Krishna Tattva. It means to know the science of Krishna. Yea, Krishna Tattva, to say Guru Hai, to know the science of Krishna. So that's what it means, because there's so many conceptions of what guru is in the world, in the name of the Vedas, like that. I mean, to demystify it, guru means teacher. Guru means teacher, and it's like teacher, guru, that can imply a sort of top-down, structure. But, essentially, whether it's through our words or our presence or way of being, we're co-creating an environment, and it could be through giving a lecture, could be simply by our nonverbals, our presence, essentially, ultimately, our consciousness. We're co-creating an environment. We're dedicated to creating an environment that's conducive for any soul we contact to awaken to their original super soul connection, their original Krishna consciousness. That connection is always there, and conditioned life, material consciousness means we've forgotten that connection is there, and so it doesn't need teacher or guru. It doesn't need to look like some sort of top-down structure, right? But it is about somehow or other being intensely responsible, that we're creating an environment for the soul to awaken to self-discovery, self-realization, Krishna consciousness. Yare Dekatarika, Krishna Bidesh, Amaragya Gu Hanatara Edesh. So Lord Chaitanya says, so wherever you go, be a guru, Hanatara. Yare Dekatarika, Krishna Bidesh, Amaragya Gu. Be a guru. Again, not like we don't need to create something mystical about guru, but it essentially means like, I'm representing Prabhupada. I'm representing Prabhupada wherever I go. Because just like, we talked about, like in the name of king, once the kings become greedy for their own sense gratification and they become non-Yudhisthira-like, then that's degradation. They're not whether it's king or a government officer or a teacher. So similarly, guru just means I'm humbly desiring to represent Srila Prabhupada in all that I do, all that I speak, wherever I go. That's the essential, simple meaning. Let's see. Yesterday night, I was at a belly dance party. So it's like we're recording. It's like a recorded confession. So what did I do there? I'll tell you. I preached Bhagavad Gita. Somehow or other, Srila Prabhupada and Sri Krishna created opportunity for me to share, for me to share about the science of self-realization. It was like a social event, and I was not feeling in my element. At the same time, I was fulfilled and happy by the opportunity that there was a small group who was interested to hear about the science of self-realization called Bhakti Yoga, to hear about like the root cause of all misery, of misidentification of the eternal spirit self with the material body, and the nature of the Atma, the nature of the spirit soul, and a process to energize the soul to turn towards itself and self-realization, to turn towards Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in an attitude of devotion. So in that way, I was feeling satisfied. And I know as I go through today that, okay, I can create opportunity, whether it's in my coaching sessions that I conduct, whether it's in correspondence I do, or whatever interactions I have, that if I can somehow be an instrument for Srila Prabhupada to share this most sublime process of Krishna consciousness. And then just like commonly in common language like this, love, the more we give, the more we have. So definitely I experience that, like if I'm going a while, even a few hours without some form of giving self-realization, Krishna consciousness, then I feel stagnant. And I'm slipping down the slippery slope into darker and darker places without even aware that I am. That's the nature of Maya, right? We're slipping into darkness. We're slipping into the prison house without realizing that we're doing it. And then I just get up like, oh, okay, morning program. Or maybe I'll respond to correspondence and in language that hopefully connects, sharing these eternal principles that Prabhupada gave us, and immediately I'm uplifted, I'm transformed. Hare Krishna. So this verse reads again, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 18, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ayajaya Dharma Suttam Ashvamedhai Stribir Vibhu Sopi Kshnama Nujai Rakshan Reme Krishna Manuvata. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices. And Maharaj Yudhisthira, constantly following Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, had protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Okay, and this, before we open up to comments, realizations, inspirations, questions, I didn't mention about horse sacrifices. So these Vedic horse sacrifices, it's not like brutally slaughtering horses. It's actually rejuvenating the horse's body, and so it's not cruelty to animals when properly done. But then, and that relates to a theme of the class, that as time went on, and we see that in the pastimes of Jesus too, right? We think of Jesus as peaceful and gentle and all of that, but there's one place where he goes into the temple of Solomon, the temple of David, and the so-called rabbis of the time. They're like slaughtering animals right in the temple, and it's gross. And he turns over the tables. So there is kind of like this like pure form, actually consciousness raising animal sacrifice, but whether in the Vedic age or in the Vedic times or Middle East religion, it became degraded into just grossly slaughtering animals. Then that leads to degradation. It is degradation of society. So thanks for your presence. I welcome any comments, questions, or sharing at this time. Anasuya.
Yes, good morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I'm in my father's kitchen, and I'm thinking about next Sunday morning because I will be preparing for Prabhupada's house enlightenment program. And I was feeling some anxiety because you will not be there and Lakshmi Priya will not be there. And I was, worried about me. And now through your class, I'm feeling enlivened and inspired and joyful. And like, I get to have this program without, what my comforts, without my comforts being there. And so just being an instrument, I like that, being an instrument for Prabhupada at Prabhupada's house, and knowing that I'll be giving service next Sunday afternoon, and looking forward to it. So I'm having a shift, and I'm really appreciating, feeling inspired now.
Thanks for sharing. I'm glad that somehow or other the class was transformational for you in an auspicious, positive direction way. Very glad. That's because I'm here. Yeah, so you're hosting an enlightenment program there at Prabhupada House in Melrose. Damayanti is giving a heart there. You're hosting a program, and and like others who would typically be there to take leadership roles won't be there. And so you're accepting more responsibility, and that's weighty. That could be felt as a burden. And then through this class, I'm hearing that you're connecting with joy and enthusiasm to step up and embrace that responsibility as an instrument for Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Anasuya. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anasuya. Any other questions, comments, realizations, inspirations, sharing? Going once, twice, 3 times. Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Thank you all.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.